Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us today. Today's presentation from Endeavour and our GP Support North team is a demonstration overview of Vena Solutions and specifically their Copilot for financial planning and analysis. And there are connectors for Dynamics GP, Dynamics Nav, and a brand new out-of-the-box connector for Business Central. So our agenda today, again, talking about Vena and their GTP with Microsoft Dynamics. We're going to have quick introductions to Vena, quick introductions into some of the strategy and how Vena works with Microsoft products. Neil's going to be jumping in to provide a demo and showcase, and then we'll come back with some pricing. The pricing will be confidential for those on today's presentation, and for those that are watching recording, please reach out to Endeavour or your GP Support North team, and we'll be able to provide you with up-to-date pricing on Vena. So this one's for me. Why Endeavour and our clients love working with Vena. It really brings a great maturity in analytics and planning, is a key contributor to your business transformation. If you're on Dynamics GP, using Vena may help you to extend the life and value that GP is bringing to your organization as you continue to evolve with greater analytics, greater access to cloud reporting and dashboards, and now gaining access to AI and copilots with the Vena Copilot for your financial analysis. We very much like, and our clients love the ability to leverage the ease of use of Vena to support their FP&A, financial planning and analysis. That includes scenario planning, your typical budget cycles, and some clients are able to move from an annual budget cycle to quarterly budgeting, and being that much more nimble in today's marketplace. The ease of use of Excel as a front end, and ability to take notes and integrate all the components into the cloud in a fast and seamless fashion really has helped with user adoption, and Vena's won a number of awards that Neil will be talking about momentarily. The financial close is one of those key aspects that happens slightly after your initial Vena implementation. And we've had clients that have been in the 10 to 12 days for their financial close, for their period end. And that's now getting down to 1 to 3 days, maybe even up to 4 days. But that time savings within their finance team helps free up additional headcount and free up additional time to do the greater analysis and provide that much more value from the finance team to the rest of the organization. Point 4 and point 5 is really talking about the integration with Microsoft and leveraging the Microsoft security and the cloud security that Vena brings to the table in accessing your data securely up in the cloud. And this is going to be a critical point to touch upon when we talk about Copilot and generative text and how that fits together within the Vena tool sets. Next slide. So Neil, why don't I let you introduce yourself and take it on from here.
Okay, appreciate it, Scott. Nice to meet everybody. Neil McDonald. I am a solutions consultant here at Vena Solutions. Been with Vena for a couple of years. Spent 16 years in the Microsoft ERP space, doing everything from installation, implementation, training, sales, pre-sales for Dynamics G, Business Central, and finance and operations. Actually known Scott for probably most of that 15, 16 years as well, and worked with the Endeavour team on and off. So just a quick introduction to who Vena is. At a glance, Vena is a company that's been around for about 13 years. We're up over 750 employees now. We serve over 1,700 customers. We have 150,000 daily users of our platform. And as you can see down the middle, we're trusted across the industry in the FP&A and CPM space by third-party researchers like Nucleus Research, G2 Crowd, BPM Partners, telling us that, and our customers, that our product is a leader in the FP&A space. You can see in the upper right there, not just our customers are happy with us, but our employees are happy with us as well. We've got all kinds of awards for the type of company we are, for the culture that we have, and the 92.4% CSAT scores. And as you can see, lower right, we serve any industry. We're kind of industry agnostic. There's even a couple in there that I believe are Endeavour customers as well. So we can help you with your industry, your business, with your reporting and your finance. Well, what is Vena? Vena Complete Planning is a platform. It's basically designed to allow us to do things like finance-led planning. So things like your strategic planning, your OpEx planning, workforce planning. But it doesn't stop there. Your industry goes beyond that. Things like revenue planning, sales planning, maybe you're in the SaaS industry, cash flow planning, project planning, tax planning. So all of these different areas where you have to do in-depth planning, you're spending a lot of time, but we can even take it beyond that. Things like month-end close, account reconciliations, tax provisioning, SOX control management. Vena is not a module-based application, it is a platform. The beauty of Vena is once you have the platform, if you start with one area, you can extend it to any of these other use cases as your need arises. How does Vena work? Well, we have connectors to basically any system that you can name. Obviously, we have some dedicated native connectors, Business Central, one we just recently released, but we have public APIs. We have flat file imports as well using the Microsoft Power Platform. We can integrate data from any system, whether it's your ERP, an HRIS system, a CRM. We're bringing all of that data into what we call Vena CubeFlex. That is our multi-dimensional OLAP cube that allows us to be able to slice and dice that data in a very, very functional way, which we'll see here in just a moment. To get into the data, we're using Excel as the lens or the window into the data set, into the Vena Cube. Finance people think in Excel. We kind of grew up with Excel, right? So why throw that away? Why change the way we work? Let's let our finance people continue to work the way that they're comfortable, continue to work in Excel. Going beyond that, we have embedded Microsoft's Power BI, we call it Vena Insights, directly inside the Vena platform so that you can get beautiful visualizations and dashboards into your data as well. Microsoft PowerPoint, we've just released a connector there. A lot of companies are spending hours every month taking a deck that they have to present to the board, present to upper management, and they have to rebuild that deck every month, having to go get the visuals, get the graphs, get the charts, get the data. With our new connector, we build the deck once because it's talking to that Vena CubeFlex platform. It's able to bring in the data, saving hours of time. And of course, we want to talk today about Vena Copilot, which is our generative AI that allows us to get more insights into our data as well. Of course, we're integrated across the Microsoft stack. As we've already discussed, Microsoft Excel, Power BI, the whole 365 platform, and Power Automate allows us to reach into most organizations are using the Microsoft platform or the Microsoft stack and be able to help integrate into their business, making their lives a whole lot faster, a whole lot easier. So let's talk about Vena Copilot. Vena Copilot is a complete planning AI assistant for FP&A. It allows us to go into our data set, and we're going to see this in the demo here in just a few moments, and literally ask it questions in plain English. I don't have to understand the data model behind it. I don't have to be very creative in really what I'm asking. I can just ask it questions in plain English. It will go in, analyze the data in a way that maybe my financial analyst might take hours. It comes back and gives me answers within seconds. It's purpose-built for FP&A. It combines a large language model with a proprietary FP&A knowledge base. This is important from a security standpoint as well. It is FP&A based. I can't go in and ask it questions, for example, how much does John Smith earn? That's an inappropriate question. It really looks at what's an appropriate question within the FP&A model and answers those questions for me. And it gets smarter over time. We can train it. We can put the questions in, tell the system whether those questions were answered correctly or not, and go in and train the model. We'll see that in the back end. And because it's built with the latest Microsoft Azure OpenAI technology, we know that it is 100% secure. Your questions and answers do not go out to the open internet. They stay within your FP&A model.
Neil, can I jump in just
Sure, go ahead, Scott.
go back to that last slide? I was really impressed with the partner story that was shared internally within our team that, Vena sent a number of its developers to the Microsoft head office, and we're basically co-developing with the Microsoft Copilot and the Azure OpenAI technology, and bringing all those pieces together and really following the best of breed security aspects where Copilot gets to control where it's looking for its source of information. And in this case, integrating to Dynamics GP or Dynamics Nav or Dynamics 365 Business Central, it's your ERP data cubes that are, the source of the information. And so it's not shopping outside, as you said. And the intelligence of just interacting with that AI is absolutely fantastic. So I just wanted to jump into that to sort of pull those pieces together. And that's why Endeavour is very excited to have you guys here today.
Okay, appreciate that, Scott. Thanks. Yeah, so as Scott mentioned, our team went to Redmond, sat with the Microsoft black belts in developing our Vena Copilot alongside the Microsoft folks there. So yeah, really excited to show you what it can do today. Let's jump right in from a demo perspective. Let me just switch to the next slide here. And what I'm going to do is just simply switch to a browser. Vena is cloud-based. So I'm going to start with the browser. We do support single sign-on. A lot of organizations are going there. I'm going to take what's normally maybe a 45 minute demo. I just want to kind of crunch it down a little bit and show you some of the capabilities that are available within the Vena platform. I'm going to log in as a user named Frank Jones. I have his ID and password. When we log in, Frank is presented with his own unique dashboard that has the tasks that he's responsible for. If there's tasks that are past due, they're coded in red. Those that we're currently working on are here in blue, and so on. We can see Frank is what we call a contributor. We'll look at the back end in just a moment. We'll see there's other roles within the Vena platform as well. But as a contributor, Frank is building out his budget. Let's start with an OpEx budget. We could look at cash flow planning, revenue. Doesn't really matter what the process is. What I want to show you is when we open up this little box, we get more details. Frank can see what he's working on. He can see when it's expected to be done. There's an area here where management can leave instructions, supporting documents. We can see who's working on this task, and there's an area here where they can collaborate as well, leaving messages back and forth to each other. If they tag one another, Frank puts a message at Jean Thomas, it will send her a message. Right now through Outlook, in the very near future, we'll have a Teams integration release where it will send a Teams message as well. And then we can see the templates that Frank is working on. Now, these templates are not stored on Frank's desktop. They're not something that he looks after locally. The beauty of that is that Vena always has the latest version. We don't have to worry about, did somebody add a column, add a row? Did somebody change the formatting? Did somebody break it? When it comes back to Frank's manager doesn't have to worry about trying to do an integration and consolidation. Vena is going to look after all of that for us. Let's launch the template. We see Vena is now downloading a copy of the template to my local Microsoft Excel 365. We do support older versions of Excel as well. And we can see a couple of things happening right off the bat here. Number one, from a security standpoint, we see in the upper left corner, Frank is limited to New York. We get into reporting, we're going to see that New York is just one small part of my organization, but through security, I can advise Frank he's only allowed to see New York. He's not allowed to go looking at other parts of the organization where he doesn't have business to be there. And secondly, we can see it is just a template. We never store the data in Excel itself. There's some formatting, there's some column headers and so on, but there's no data. The data comes from the Vena Cube when we use the choose box to select what we want to work on. So while Frank is working in New York, he can build out his sales budget, do some analysis, build out his budget. When he's finished, saves that data, works on his services budget, then his marketing budget, and so on. While Frank's doing this in New York, somebody else might be working on the Toronto budget or the Montreal or the Los Angeles budget using the same template. We're just simply selecting the data we want to work with through the choose box, and the Vena Cube Flex is giving us that data. We can use this template over and over again. We don't have to start from scratch every year when we want to move to a new year. And we can also create different scenarios as well. I've been doing budgeting on and off for probably 40 years, and I don't think I've ever built a budget where at some point a manager didn't come along and say, stop changing the budget. That's it. It's locked. That's what we have to live with. But I want to do short-term forecasting. As an accountant, I mean, I want to be able to make small changes to next month and the month after. I can very easily version my budget, which is locked, into a forecast. Or perhaps I even want to do some what-if planning. You know, what if we open a new store? What if we close a location? What if COVID comes back and we have to lay people off? Or what if we bring in a new product line? So I can do all sorts of scenario planning as well, starting with that original budget. Frank's going to apply the selection. Now we see Vena populating the template. And we're getting the data that Frank needs to build out his budget. Now, just to give you an example of some of the things that Frank can do here to build his budget, we're seeing the GL accounts coming in. We're seeing different sets of data. We have actuals. Now, these are locked. They're coming from your ERP, whether it's GP, NAV, Business Central, doesn't really matter. They're locked because it is the source of truth for actuals. But there's an area here where last year's budget can be copied over, versioned into a forecast, where Frank can do some short-term planning. For example, Frank thought he had to spend $10,000 on office equipment. He planned this a year ago. He doesn't need to do that now. Very easy for Frank to make that change. His budget, his forecast is more accurate now than it was a few moments ago. Notice on this page, the budget area where we're going to focus, there's 3 different colored cells to let Frank understand how to work in this area. These colors are optional, entirely up to you which ones you use. The blue cells simply let Frank know it's an input area. He can enter a number because it's Excel. You know, he can drag and drop. On my keyboard, I can Control-C, Control-V to copy paste. If I want to build a formula, anything that Frank knows how to do in Excel, he just continues to do it. Without compromise, there's no new formulas, no new syntax, no proprietary language he has to learn. He just keeps working in Excel. If we want to be a little more flexible, we can build in drivers within the template as well. For example, in my environment, I have things like an even spread based on weekdays, non-holidays, based on seasonal trends, cost per employee, you know, employee survey results, units sold, pipeline opportunities, you name it, we can build it. As long as you can build the formula in Excel, we can build it into the template. Notice when I change from an even spread to any other driver, Vena simply highlights where that data no longer applies. When I take the data out, it instantly applies the new driver, and now I've got a weekday spread built into this template. If we need more data, for example, Frank wants $70,000 for travel, but as a manager, you probably want more detail. We can have a travel tab, something like this, where Frank doesn't have to know how to build this. He doesn't need to know the logic. If he needs to send someone else to, for example, to this client meeting, simply come over, insert a new line, just like we did on those other blue cells. Frank's going to type in the information, copy, paste, whatever. There's a set of drivers here to determine when these costs are going to happen. We can see, for example, someone who's on the road year-round, you know, different quarterly trips, different monthly trips. Vena then takes those numbers from that spread, and that's what's showing up here on Frank's budget template. We can plan at the vendor level. We can reach into the ERP, whether it's GP, NAV, Business Central. We can pull the approved vendor list out and let you decide which vendors can be used for which category. Your users simply need to come in, select the vendor. You know, what are they going to buy? Is it a flat rate? Is it an hourly rate? Is it a combination of the two? Same set of drivers here to determine when those costs are going to hit. And that's what Vena is bringing over into these 3 vendor lines. So we're doing bottom-up planning. So all of your department heads, all of your budget managers can go in and build their budgets, and it will automatically roll up and consolidate. We'll see in just a moment in the reports. They'll automatically roll up into that consolidated or different views of your budget. But we can also do top-down planning. Frank is responsible, for example, in January for $4,400 of the head office rent. He can't change it, but it's part of his budget. So just to show you an example of some of the different functions that are available within Vena as people are building their budgets. Again, I'm doing OpEx. It could be revenue, it could be SaaS planning, it could be workforce planning. It doesn't really matter, but we've got the ability to build these drivers into the template to make the template more useful. If Frank needs more detail, he's working here on his January advertising budget, for example, and he's wondering, you know, what happened last year? Does Frank know how to go into Dynamics GP, into Business Central, into Nav, and run that query to see all the transactions that happened last year? Well, maybe, maybe not, but it doesn't really matter because Vena already knows the answer. If we go look at last year, there's the prior period, January of last year. Frank can come over to the data inspection area and drill the transactions. Vena, because it's talking to the ERP at the transaction level, can show on all of these dates last year. There's the vendors we did business with. There's the dollar amounts. And Frank can now use this data to analyze his budget, make some smart decisions on what's happening with his budget. If he needs to do some calculations, we call it a scratch pad. Simply insert the scratch pad button here, quantity, cost, total, basic Excel skills. Again, no proprietary language to learn. Frank comes up with his 20,500, wants to link that back to his budget. Very easy because he's used to working in Excel for him to do that. And he simply carries on building out his budget. And he would continue working across the rest of the budget accordingly. At some point in time, Frank's going to save the data to Vena. Couple things to point out here. We can put some guardrails in place. As people are building out their budgets, we probably want them to stay within the rules. Notice if Frank puts in a number that's quite large, Vena highlights that. We get the orange bar here. We get the little orange X. When Frank tries to save it, it says, hey, hold on, Frank, you broke the rules. Management says you can't go more than 20% year over year. This could be a legitimate expense. Frank knows it's there, so he's going to say, no, let's not save it yet. Come back in here, put in a comment of some kind, and now he can continue to save that. But if Frank does something, maybe he fat fingers a little bit, instead of 80,000, he accidentally puts in 800,000. When he tries to save that, we now get a hard validation. Frank has exceeded his budget. We can see at the top here by over 300,000. So again, hold your people accountable as they're building their budgets so that there can be some rule sets in place so that when the budget comes to you as a manager, as the FP&A analyst, it's much more accurate than it could have been without these guardrails. The second thing that happened when I did that save is that Vena tracked all the changes. Notice over here in the inspection area, there is an audit trail button. If I click on that button, I can see there's the changes we just made. May 28th at 1:22 Atlantic time. I'm in Halifax. That's the time zone I'm in. So it's tracking the date and the timestamp based on the user. We can see it was Frank Jones made 23 changes. We can see changes made yesterday, earlier in the week, changes made last week, all the way back, an unlimited amount of audit tracking in here. But beyond just the fact that, yes, Frank made 23 changes, if we click the button, Vena will open up a version of the template that says, here's the things that Frank actually changed. So we can highlight the cells. The green outline here tells me that this went from a 0 value to now having a value in it. Count 6001, the value for January 2024's budget went from 0 to 20,500. The blue tells me that it went from one value to another, so 2,083 to 2,194. Beyond that, I can even see why that change happened. Frank changed the driver from an even spread to a weekday spread. So we get this complete audit trail of Vena tracking everything that happened so that as a manager or your auditors coming down the road can see exactly how that budget was built. We can see exactly the changes that were made, and we can go back as far as we want to see that. Now, when Frank has finished working on his budget, and bear in mind, what I'm showing you here is normally a much longer demo, and if you want to have more information on how Vena works, certainly get a hold of Scott and his team, and they can get you in touch with the folks here at Vena, and we'll give you a more detailed demo. But at some point when Frank's finished, he's going to click the Submit button to submit his budget to the next level. Notice it's now in review. Frank can no longer change it. These templates are view only, so we can lock that budget down until such time as management decides the budget is okay or it's not okay. So where did that go? If I log in as a different user, I'm just going to switch views here. And if I go back in as the manager for this particular process, this is where Frank was working on his annual plan, right? There is, in the manager view, there's actually 3 different roles here as well. Notice there's a manager, a modeler, and an admin. So this would be a power user license. Scott's going to talk more about the licensing here in a bit. But an admin decides who's allowed in Vena. What are they allowed to see, not allowed to see? The modeler would look after the integration between Business Central, GP, Nav, and Vena. and then the manager owns the process. And in this case, we're looking at the 24 annual plan. The designer here starts with a workflow, has a start point, has an end point. This is all drag and drop, very easy to simply right-click and add new steps. But this is where Frank was working in here. We can have different flows, different people involved for different parts of the organization. Frank was working on his expense plan. When he hit that submit button, it pushed it forward to a brand new process called expense review. I would expect, looking at this diagram, one of two things to happen. It's either going to get a green light or it's going to get a red light. If we notice, this has been assigned to me. So let's go look at my contributor view. I have a task called expense review with the option either approve or reject. So I can look at these templates. I can open them up. I can modify them. Maybe I just need to make small tweaks to what Frank has done. And then I can either approve or reject his budget. So that's Vena's back end working to process everything, keep it flowing from one point to the next. This is just one process. If I back out, notice we're working here in the annual plan. In my platform, I have things like consolidations, financial close, all sorts of different industry use cases, legal, franchise, construction, project resource planning, not-for-profit, you name it. If you can think it, if it's a collaborative process that can be built out in Excel, we can manage it within the Vena platform. So just to show you some of the examples of what Vena is capable of. Now, let's go talk about some of the reporting. Frank's built out his budget. Let's go back into Frank's area for a minute. And while he's waiting for his budget to be approved, let's look at a couple different reports. First of all, let's look at the financial statements. Obviously, because Vena can talk to your ERP, it can look at all of the actuals, it can look at the forecast, it can look at the budgets, it can build out all of your financial statements as well. Now, for the purposes of this demo, I've turned off all of the security from a reporting standpoint because I want to show you, remember Frank was limited to New York. It's just one small part of my entire organization. So I can have managers in New York and Los Angeles and Houston and so on looking at their own budget, but also beyond that, all of these could roll up to perhaps a regional manager, a US and Canada regional manager. I've got Warsaw and London that roll up to an EU manager, for example. In turn, all of this rolls up and the consolidation is done for the entire corporation as well. I can also have different views of my departments. Remember, Frank was working on his sales budget, could go on and work on others, but I could have alternate roll-ups in here as well. For example, I might have a chief revenue officer. All things revenue roll up to him. My director of operations, all things non-revenue related roll up to that person. They want their own unique view of the organization as well. Just like we had before, we'll pick the time period, we'll pick the scenario. For those of you who are working cross-border, Vena is also capable of doing the currency exchanges in your financial statements. We apply the selection and we can see Vena now building out all of my financial statements. I've got an income statement, I've got a balance sheet, I've got a cash flow statement, with the ability to go back and look at the actuals, look at the forecast, look at the budgets, but not just look at the numbers. I can drill into those. I don't believe that you can do this. Anything that I've seen in my Dynamics GP and Business Central days, very hard to kind of do something like this. If I want to know what's going on with this $800,000, I can drill down into that number and it will show me for every part of the organization, for every department, where those actuals came from. So I can get insights into my numbers that I wouldn't have with just a flat report. On the balance sheet, same thing. I've got my ratios across the top. If I wanted to build out something, I want to modify these templates. Just to point out again, this is just a basic Excel formula. I'm S16 divided by S45. I've got an if error statement wrapped around it. There is no proprietary coding, no proprietary language I need to learn to be able to work in Vena. It's just Excel talking to the Vena Cube Flex. I've got my cash flow statement, the variance analysis. This is where we can really start to get some insights into our business as well. Notice I have month, quarter, year to date, and using the choose area here, I can select what I want to look at. I can choose any scenario and compare it with any other scenario. So let's do a budget versus actual. And Frank was working in 2024. And let's drill back into January where Frank was making those changes. And let's compare January last year to January this year. I make the selection, simply hit the refresh button. Vena is going to update the month, the quarter, and the year to date. Now, If I come down, I'm looking at this report, and I'm wondering, why is my advertising almost $50,000 less than it was last year? Why are we budgeting so much less? Well, let's investigate this 143,000. I can drill down into this number, just like I saw a moment ago. I can see for each part of the organization and each department, the numbers that everybody put into their budget. There's a number that might look familiar. We were just looking at this 20,500 a few moments ago as part of Frank's budget. Now, we know because we just did it that it was Frank, but what if maybe your leadership is looking at this report thinking, this number is almost double any other number in this list. What was going on there? Well, it's New York sales. Chances are it was Frank. Let's confirm. I'm going to drill the saves to see where that number came from. I can see, yes, on May 28th at 122, that value of 20,500 was saved by Frank Jones while he was working on his operating expenses. Let's download the details. We can drill right in. We're back where we started. This is where Frank was building his budget. There's the 20,500. We can see it came from his scratch pad. There's the scratch pad that we can see what Frank was doing as he built out his budget. We can even see the drill sheet where Frank was analyzing data to make sure that his budget made sense. If he added any rows, we can see here where he added the row on the travel sheet. Everything that Frank did as he built his budget, we can see it because we're drilling in from the Vena Cube. It's allowing us to go back through the saves, through the actual data set. Okay, so that's just one aspect of the reporting. Let's look at a couple other areas. Let's go look at, for example, Vena Insights. So let's say I'm looking at my Vena Insights. I'm putting dashboards together. This is Power BI. We can see it loading. I'm still within the Vena platform, but Power BI is loading here, and it's bringing up dashboards that I can now present to my management team, and they can kind of self-serve looking at this data. They have the same ability to slice and dice that Frank had in that choose box. For example, if I unselect everything and we select only New York, the entire screen rebuilds to show me only New York. Let's go back, look at the entire organization. So imagine your management team, your leadership being able to self-serve with something like this. They can compare different scenarios, forecasts, budgets, the what-if planning, and so on, different time periods, different months, different profitability measures. But they're looking at different types of graphs and charts, not just pretty pictures, but they're actually something going on here. For example, what is this $171,000 in advertising in June? If I right-click on that, I can drill through to the actual data. Vena now provides for all of these different parts of the organization, these different entities, here's the advertising budget. Well, what is this $6,020 from New York sales? If I highlight that, notice I have the ability to download the transactions. Vena will bring me the transactions right in here. We can see it coming up as a query. It opens up in Excel, and I can now analyze the actual transactions right down to where I can see, who was the vendor, what was the dollar amount, what was the invoice ID. So your executives can self-serve when it comes to answering questions about some of the scenarios that they might have or the questions they might have about the financial statements. Let's look at the way that Microsoft has incorporated some AI into this. Suppose this is your organization as a whole. We program this that when I hover over it, it highlights and says, hey, here's a certain set of data that you have asked for. It's looking and saying, my forecast trended down, 47% decrease between January and November. And it gives me statistics based on what I pre-programmed the AI to look at. But this is my entire organization. If I right-click, I can drill down and break this out to perhaps different entities or different departments, different projects. And if I hover over, for example, New York, the AI analyzes my entire data set, but it ignores everything that is not New York. Way faster than I could get one of my financial analysts to do this. If I switch to Houston, it reruns, it ignores everything that is not Houston. So we're taking advantage of Microsoft's AI to be able to analyze the data and get faster insights into the data set. Let's come up here and look at the gross margin breakdown. Suppose I'm looking at this and I can see in this decomposition tree, I'm starting with my gross margin. Let's blow this out. I've got my gross margin for my different areas. If I wanted to, I can right click. I can drill through to the actual data to see what makes up those product sales. And as I'm going through, someone maybe in the room says, I don't want to talk about Los Angeles. I want to talk about Chicago. Very easy to simply click, and now we're looking at Chicago. But what if someone asks a question and say, for September of last year, what percentage of gross margin was made up by product sales? I mean, I can see product sales here. I can see my gross margin, but I want more details. This is where Vena Copilot can start to become your financial analyst. Notice I click on the Vena Copilot here, and it says, hey, welcome to Vena Copilot. There's a link back here to our security paper, some instructions on how to use it if you need to, and we'll look at our revenue performance model. So I'm going to type in the question, in US dollars, what percentage of gross margin do product sales make up in September of 2023? Now, I could send an analyst off to do this for me, right? They could pull up their computer and they could start doing analysis and download a bunch of data. But faster really than they could do that, Vena Copilot comes back and says, in September 2023, product sales were 4 million, gross margin was 6, therefore it was 61.43%. And we start to get answers to the question. Notice I can start to train the AI here. Did I like the answer? I can say it was correct or incorrect. I could even download a report or copy that if I want to put that into another document. But maybe I want more detail. I want to break this down by entity. Now, I can see it over here on the side of the screen. I can see some numbers, but I want to see all of them in one spot all at once. So I've just asked it by entity, and it knows that the question I've asked here is relevant to the information it's already given me. We'll give it just a moment to calculate that. And now we can see on an entity by entity basis, it's showing me there's Chicago, Houston, Los Angeles, New York, and so on. But I want my departments in there as well. I've got services and sales both producing sales dollars. So let's go even further. Let's say by entity, by department, sorted highest to lowest. And we'll simply hit the go button. Now, if you do something that Vena doesn't understand, it will prompt you. It'll simply say, I need more information. I've done this purposely to show it's not broken. It simply says, hey, I need more details. So let's go back to the original question, and we can very easily just copy that, and we can paste that back in. And let's say, and we'll ask it the same question. We'll just kind of reword it just a little differently. So it's the same question. I'm simply building on what was there before. Now, as these questions come back correctly or incorrectly, we can go back into the back end and we can start to train the model to understand that when I ask a question, this is what I'm looking for. Let this finish, and then we'll go back and look at what's going on in the back end. There we go. So now it's giving me the information I was looking for. So I asked the first question in a way it just didn't understand. Now I've asked it in a way that it does understand. It's showing me, first of all, for the sales department for each region, and then it's showing me by the services department for each region. And again, I can give it a thumbs up, say, yep, that was a great answer, give it a thumbs down, or I can download this information in an Excel CSV format that I could then use to do some other analysis on that. So let's just take a quick look at that. Let's download that. And it comes in as a zip file, and that's opening up on my other monitor, but I'll open the screen. And then from here, we can see the detail that is coming from within the Vena Copilot. So we can see again our sales, our gross margin. It's doing those calculations and it's giving me the detail. At this point, I can use any other tool I want. I can do a pivot table. I can use the Microsoft, maybe even the analyze data option here, which will come in and look at the data and present me some areas I might want to look at to get more information on the data set that I'm referring to. So what's going on in the background? How do we train Vena Copilot? Let's go back over to our modeler view for a minute and just very quickly have a quick look. If I go into the data transformation, there is an AI builder. This is where we set up the AI models. I've only got one in my environment. It is a revenue performance model. If you need to create additional models, very easy to do that. We start with a wizard. Start with revenue or costs, so revenue and expenses, or you can start from scratch if you have, an HRIS set, that kind of thing. You can create your own model and start to train it. We have pre-built the revenue and the cost model. We've pre-trained it with about 200, 250 questions. Notice if I manage the AI model, it's going to show me, here's a bunch of different questions that might be relevant to what's going on. These are the ones that I've asked it. We can see who asked. And if there was errors in there, if I want to look and see, what was the error that was caused, very easy to come in and I can view that chat and I can review everything that I've asked it. And we keep going down until we get to the point where it says, hey, there was not enough information here. I asked it about monthly breakdown. I didn't have that information. So I can now either change my model set or I can go in and train the AI to understand how to get monthly breakdowns. Very easy to do this. It's basically I'm right-clicking, I'm dragging and dropping. Nothing fancy going on here. Excuse me just a second. I just got a message that my battery's dying.
So pricing, this part will be edited out for those on the line. Thank you. Neil, did you want to jump back in, take over control, or shall I wrap up and sort of welcome everyone back to Endeavour?
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to show, if you want me to take a look at that, Scott, was the PowerPoint integration. It would take maybe 5 minutes.
Oh, I love that part. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
You take over the screen. I'll be here.
Okay, you're seeing my screen again, Scott?
I can see it. We have the Vena Executive Summary Dashboard.
Excellent. Okay, so this was Vena Insights that we were looking at, of course, the Power BI. Lots of different functionality here within, I'll just take another couple of minutes here. Again, the decomposition trees, charts, graphs, even some of the Microsoft AI doing some analysis here. Notice it says it's running an analysis. We're asking it on this particular page, what influences OpEx to either increase or decrease. I like to show this because it's not just doing a very surface level analysis. It's going cross-dimensional. It's looking at accounts. It's looking at entities. It's looking at departments. And if we see one that looks out of whack, the sales department seems a little high, simple click on that and I can see, yeah, the expenses are very high there. Hover over the tree graph here and I can see, my salaries and wages is 2 million, my telecom's $1 million. That tells me there's something wrong. My telecom is way too high in comparison to my salaries and wages. So let's investigate further. I'm going to simply left click on sales. Notice all the KPIs rerun, the analysis reruns, all the graphs and charts rebuild. Notice if I hover here, I can see the last two lines, my current year and prior year. My current year telecom is 972, prior year 298. Again, just a way to very quickly get in there and do some analysis on your data rather than having to have people spend hours. Now I know where I want my people to focus their time, right? Let's let our smart people do smart things, not crunching numbers, but using the numbers that are available through the AI to be able to manage the business. Now, let's go look
Neil, also the the security stuff that you talked about earlier controls all of this as well. So if you're signing in as Frank Jones, he only gets to see the New York. All of this dashboard is going to be just New York data, and that's control at the security level. So it's that build once, use many across multiple departments, across multiple divisions, across multiple individuals. And that's really where a lot of this month-end close happens that much quicker, is because the models are there and we're not recreating the wheel for every single department.
Very good. Yes. Now let's go look at the PowerPoint. I'm going to whip back over to my other view. So I'm back in as the manager. Let me find my manager view here. Seems to have disappeared on me. Here we are. So I go back into the manager view and I do have in my files library here, I do have some PowerPoint decks. So I'm creating a town hall for my management board. I'm showing this to them maybe every month, doing a presentation. I don't want to have to rebuild it every month. I'm going to open it with the Vena for Microsoft PowerPoint. It does take a moment to open here. It's going to probably open on my other monitor, which I'll drag over. Give it just a moment. There it comes, and it is on my middle monitor here. We'll drag that over, and now we can see the PowerPoint deck coming up here. And we can see I've got my deck built out. I've got all of my different areas that I want to look at on the deck. But notice over here on the far right, I've got a couple Excel templates that are built into this that talk to this particular template. And if I want to add new elements, if I scroll down, for example, I want to add a new element maybe to this particular screen. This is my people breakdown. If I click on the employee report, Vena will find for me any graphs, charts, KPIs that are built into that template. Very easy to insert them in. I'm simply going to do a highlight and I can drag that, put it where I want it on my chart. I can do the same with the KPIs. I've done the same with all of the others. If we come back up to some of these other ones up above, if I go back to the other template, notice in this one, I have all of the graphs and charts. Notice, for example, I don't have my spending in here. There's nothing here for 2024, but all the graphs and charts. Now, just like I had in the rest of Vena, I have a choose box. So let's use the choose box and say, instead of looking at 2024 data, let's choose this or change this. So let's go back to look at, we'll change to 2023. And I can do the same thing with the other one. So let's go look at Frank's area. So let's look at New York for 2023. We'll save and review. We can see what we're selecting. We apply the changes. Now, I don't have to go and grab the graphs and the charts and the KPIs from my Excel, from my Vena. It's happening automatically. We see it working over here in the side. It's doing a refresh. In a couple moments, it's going to come back and tell me, yes, I've retrieved all the correct data. We see that. Now it's going to rebuild every chart, every graph within this entire deck. So where a moment ago I was looking at 2024 data, I now have data for 2023. As we can see, there's my 23's actuals versus budget. The spending is now filled out. So all of the detail that I want to look at in my deck builds automatically simply because I'm using the Vena for Microsoft PowerPoint connector. Okay, and I'll stop there, Scott, and turn it back over to you.
A quick recap on Endeavour. 3 lines of business: advisory, implementation, optimization, and support through our brands, Endeavour Solutions, GP Support North, and purely CRM, with our core values of integrity, trust, and accountability. We're now into 35 years, over 90 consultants within Endeavour across Canada, over 900 clients, 550 of which are on Dynamics GP, and very near and dear to our hearts of helping those on GP remain on GP. And if they have the ability to get more out of their systems with Vena, then that's definitely a strong approach. And those that are on GP and want to move to Business Central, we have a very large team that are actively helping clients migrate to the cloud and take the best of both. Those that are new to Endeavour on Business Central or on Nav, obviously Vena is something new to you and something to consider for your phase 2, phase 3 post-implementation. Large CRM team, and we do work with components to pull in CRM as well. So just for the last slide, next steps, we have an evolving team. Trish, Paul, and Jerry are working with existing clients for a variety of analysis and assessments, and obviously being able to help you with any of your immediate needs, or reach out to the Endeavour support desk or reply to the webinar. And those that are new to Endeavour, Steve, James, and Johnny, are very happy to work with you and see if there's a fit. So with that said, thank you very much, everyone. We're here to help you make your business applications work for you, help you get the most out of your applications and systems, and achieve all of your goals. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.